Here in Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu is set to visit Benue State on Wednesday following persistent attacks there. More than 200 people have died in a series of attacks across several communities in the last few days. Authorities say thousands have fled their homes. President Tinubu has described the killings as inhuman.
While I sympathize with the Benue people, I've spoken to the governor. The leadership and people of Benue should accept our condolences and tried hard, very, very consciously, to maintain peace, harmony among themselves. I've always said this, that we are one single huge family living in the same house, stay in different rooms, but living together in harmony will be the result of our diversity for prosperity. We should be able to manage our anger and frustrations. I sympathize with those who have lost their life. I will adjust my program and go see Benue people on Wednesday.
President Tinubu. Well, Arise correspondent Ferdinand Duroha takes a look at the history of violence in Nigeria's volatile north-central middle belt region.
The attacks in Yewata forces the world to pause and reflect on the carnage taking place in Nigeria's north-central. In the early hours of Friday, June 13, 2025, more than 200 villagers, including 5 security personnel and internally displaced persons, were slaughtered by suspected terrorist herdsmen on Yewata, a farming community in Guma local government area of Benue State. The killings mirror the violence which has become a normal in the geopolitical zone, with special reference to the Plateau and Benue States, though tensions between farmers, predominantly Christian, and herders, mostly Fulani, over land and grazing routes, date back decades. The situation worsened in the 1970s due to environmental pressures, including droughts that forced pastoralists to mitigate southwards. The proliferation of modern weapons has further escalated violence, turning local disputes into large-scale security threats with dire consequences. Wanton loss of lives, entire communities reduced to ruins, and the Middle Belt, a key agricultural region, has seen a decline in food production, exacerbating inflation and food insecurity in Africa. The situation is made worse by the obvious lack of capacity of the Nigerian government, who have been accused of lacking the political will to end the violence. It is also an indictment of Nigeria's security operatives, who are often accused of complacency or even aiding the aggressors. Only recently, the Nigerian army had made a show of the visits of the Chief of Army Staff to Benue State. Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede had met with stakeholders, but the killings persist. Matters are also made worse by the often insensitivity of the government or lack of compassion for victims. For instance, police operatives in Makurdi dispersed protesters using tear gas during a demonstration over the renewed attacks in the state. For the sake of clarity, a major question by the protesters is how many more persons need to die before a wholesome action is taken by the government to end the killings in the North Central. In other words, Nigerians are calling on the government to live up to its constitutional responsibilities of promoting right to life and own properties. While yearning for good leadership and governance, Nigerians are also asking the government to hold perpetrators of violence accountable and discourage a climate of impunity. At a time when the world is showing exhaustion in humanitarian services, the newly inaugurated Pope, Leo XIV seems to be the only international figure calling for peace in Nigeria. During his Angelus last Sunday, the head of the Catholic Church referred to the weekend's attacks in Benue State as a terrible massacre. He also prayed that security, justice, and peace will prevail in Nigeria, especially in the once peaceful Middle Belt, a geopolitical zone he had visited some years before his papacy. Ferdinand Roja, Arise News.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Eugene Aliegba, who is a professor of political science at Nasarawa State University. He also hails from Benue State. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Chess.
I mean, there's not much more to say. That documentary kind of covered it historically, what has been going on in Benue State. What are you hoping that President Tinubu will achieve when he goes there tomorrow, Wednesday?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to use this opportunity to condole with the families of this immediate attack in Yellowater, and also other attacks that have happened recently, most recently, around the local government. I come from Goa West, which is virtually, I would say that, also recent, the most hit by this violence. Goa West is a local government where out of the 15 council ward, nobody is living anywhere. All communities have been attacked. They all converge in the local government headquarters. And so this attack is the worst of it as has happened recently. It's unfortunate it has happened, and we pray that such a thing doesn't repeat itself. For the visit of the president, so much is being expected. There's quite a lot of frustration. The state government, that is anchoring and managing the security, also needs the support of the president to give specific orders so that certain major actions can take place. One of the examples, for instance, there are instances where certain violent take place, but military formations cannot act decisively in the manner that is expected, and most of the time the excuse is that they need orders from above, and this has been part of the problem, if not just part of it, the major problem that decisive action should be taken.
In other words, you don't think that the army, the way the command structure is centered at the moment, will be able to actually deal with the problem in your state? And I don't know if you're an advocate of state police and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree. First and foremost, I think the point has to be made very clear, is that the first responsibility of querying internal resurrection is that of the police. But when certain resurrection becomes out of hand, the law, the constitution empowers the president to invoke certain powers in order to use the army. So the army is most of the time cautious in a way, but we're in a period of war. So I had gone to examine a PhD in NDA, and I asked them, there was this thing about Operation Lafia Dole in Borno, and I asked them, I asked the students and the audience that supposing Cameroonian army had invaded Sambisa forest, does not the Nigerian army has the capacity within 24 hours to stamp it out? All of them say yes. So there's obviously something wrong somewhere.
What do you reckon is wrong?
There is need. We're under siege. Benue State is under siege. About 6 local government until recently that some level the president's directive brought some little restraint and calm in certain places. We're under siege. So
I know you made the point that you are under siege, but you also made the point that if Nigeria was invaded by a foreign country, that the army would be able to step up to the plate.
And we're invaded by...
So why do you think they're not stepping up to the plate?
That's why the president has to ask questions, has to give directives.
And it's important, is it, that he gets the proper perspective about what is going on?
Exactly. I'm sure he's coming to Benue now with that. He's going to get information from communities, from the traditional institutions, from the army and their problem. They too might have their own problems that until he's around now, a lot of issues will be put on the table.
And you come from a local government that's also hard hit by this violence.
It's hard hit. It's currently only the local government headquarters out of 15th council ward has people living there. And it was even that. It was attacked recently, about 5 days back. Over 20-something people were killed. They attacked at the age.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. Yeah. But why do you think this violence keeps recurring?
Yeah, this violence keeps recurring because the perpetrators have not properly been accosted and treated as people perpetrating crime. And I'll give you an example.
But is it just the people, the herders? I mean, is there some kind of revenge attack that then fuels, revenge from the other side, which is why it keeps happening all the time? I mean, because they can't keep just going to same communities and killing people.
No, first and foremost, the issue of revenge does not even come in. Because we have a situation where since 2011, and I'm saying with all facts because by 2011 I was in government, I was a commissioner under that regime, and for quite some time. By 2011, when this came in, these characters crossed in from Nasarawa State.
Right. And who are the characters?
The armed invaders,
right?
Herdsmen initially, who will come with cattle and all that, and will take over communities and want to stay there with permit. Before then, when herdsmen want to come to a community, they will first seek the approval of the traditional ruler. They will get permission. They will stay for a while, especially during dry season. And once the rain start coming, they evacuate. These ones came in first without women, armed, and forcefully will stay and sack people violently. And this has continued. So the question about revenge is not there.
Well, that is it's a very worrying trend. So what are your hopes now then?
Well, the hopes is that this has been our cry. This has been the cry of the federal government as of 2-3 days back. The state government has done a lot in managing the situation in terms of its ability to manage security and all that. But I'm sure that about 3 days back, you could hear that the governor himself made a broadcast saying, look, I'm going to see the president and tell him all that he needs to hear. And ultimately, the president is going to be there tomorrow. So I'm sure the expectation is that the frustration on people's faces, the frustration of the state government, the difficulties that the security agencies themselves are facing will all be tabled, and it is the prayer that this matter will be resolved at once.
I want to thank you very much indeed. Eugene Aliegba is a professor of political science at Nasarawa State University, and he comes from Benue State.